Hey, board gamers, BJ from Board Game Gumbo here, back with episode number 38 of Gumbo Live. Gumbo Live is the #1 Facebook Live talk show dedicated to board gaming. Our special guest tonight, Justin D. Jacobson, game designer and CEO of Restoration Games. Justin, the #1 Facebook Live talk show because we're still the only Facebook Live talk show dedicated to board gaming, but we're going to hold on to that mantle as long as we can. Gumbo Live is a proud member of Punchboard Media. Check out some of the other fine members like Katie's Game Corner. Katie is from the UK and she loves all kinds of wargaming. She's very active on social media and she writes a very personal blog filled with deep dives on some of the latest games. Punchboard Media, where we all bring something to the table. A couple of quick show notes. Hit me up on social media. Twitter at BoardGameGumbo, at Facebook.com/BoardGameGumbo. We'll be looking for your questions on the chat, but let's get to our guest, Justin Jacobson of Restoration Games. Man, how are you? And welcome to the Gumbo.
I'm doing great, obviously, and thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Look, for anybody who doesn't know you and why they would be watching this show and they've never heard of Fireball Island, I have no idea. But just in case, give us the quick elevator pitch about who is Justin Jacobson and what is Restoration Games.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're here for like a gumbo recipe, you probably should have had Rob on.
Oh, I heard you're a good cook, though, Justin.
Yeah, well, I hold my own, but Rob's the pro.
I'm waiting for that competition between the two of you because I want to be there for the tasting.
Yeah, that's a little spoiler alert. That is one of our future stretch goals for the campaign. So yeah, I'm the president of Restoration Games, and our tagline is "Every game deserves another turn." And I'm a lawyer by trade. I was practicing for 20 some odd years, but I've been a gamer for much, much longer than that. And always sort of had my hand in board gaming and gaming in general. On the legal side of things, I would help out people with contracts and things like that. And every year I would go to Gen Con and do a legal seminar, a little legal Q&A, mostly so I could write off the trip. And just as a happenstance, after one of those Q&As, a lovely woman came up to me and said, my husband's getting ready to leave Hasbro, and he's got a few questions. Would you mind talking with him? And that turned out to be Lindsay Davio, married to Rob Davio. And I had dinner with them, and we sort of talked about stuff, and it was actually related to what would turn out to be Pandemic Legacy. And we sort of, I'd worked with him for a number of years since then, reviewing contracts and stuff like that. And I don't know, about 3 or 4 years ago, I had this wild idea to sort of bring back these old games and modernize them and bring them back for a modern gamer. And it's just something I was newlywed until I had lunch with some high school friends, and they basically said, Justin, you should do this. I mean, it's the way I was talking about it, they could see that I was much more passionate than I was about practicing law and collecting debts and all that stuff.
Sure.
So that was sort of gave me the push to pull the trigger. And I talked to Rob and I said, Rob, I've got this idea to start a game company. Wait, hear me out. And I talked about what the idea was. And we both knew you can't just start a game company with the idea of just making good games. I mean, everyone's doing that. It's so competitive, so crowded. It was this specific idea. And when I was talking to Rob about it, we started just going back and forth about some of the old games that we remembered from our childhood. Rob used to like this game called Pathfinder, which is like where it has nothing to do with the current Pathfinder game. It's an old game from like the 70s where each side, it's a 2-player game, each side would make a maze and then the other person would have to try and solve it. And he was talking about how he actually went back and sort of came up with some ideas of how to tweak it. And sort of one thing led to another, and we finally just went ahead and did it.
And that's the story, Restoration Games right there.
There it is.
Do you rather talking about games or you rather talking about law? Both of us share that common trait. We're both lawyers by trade. I'm assuming you rather talk about games, of course.
I'm happy to talk about law. I actually find law extremely interesting from a purely theoretical standpoint. And in fact, one of the things I do on the side is I'm actually a teacher. I teach a high school class on law.
Oh, okay.
And I love doing that. It can be tough getting up every morning at 6 o'clock to go teach first period. But teaching the kids is great. And I love teaching people about the law. It's just the practice of law can be so challenging. I used to say all the time, the law would be great if you didn't have to deal with clients, opposing counsel, and judges.
And the judges, right? Yeah.
Because usually it doesn't matter what case you're in, one of the three is going to be a pain in the butt.
I've never met Lindsay or Rob, but I do have a Lindsay Davio story, even though I never met her.
All right.
And the story is similar to what you're talking about. I was also a teacher. I taught, my dad and I both taught college law. In other words, law classes to college students. But on the way back from Gen Con last year, I ended up getting slotted in a seat right in front of a female and a guy behind me. The guy sitting next to me, this is just one seat away, the guy sitting next to me was in the oil field. I do oil field work. So I ended up spending 3 hours talking basically about my job for 3 hours as we shared, our experiences, him on the production side, me on the law side. But the entire time I'm listening behind me, and it was Lindsay Davio with a guy sitting next to her. Now, I know who Lindsay Davio is. I mean, I write a blog, I follow the trades. And the entire time, he has no idea who Rob Davio is. He has no idea who Lindsay is. And he's an RPGer. And I know you're an RPGer at heart. If I remember right, you used to write RPGs, correct?
Yep.
So the whole time he's talking about his RPG interests with no idea that he's sitting next to the wife of a rock star, right? When it comes to board game design, in our hobby, at least. In our hobbies.
Lindsay, I mean, it's funny. If you're into board games, you wouldn't know it. I mean, a lot of these people who contribute to these games, particularly at a place like Hasbro, don't get a lot of credit. But Lindsay does a lot of amazing graphic design and product design, packaging design and stuff for a lot of the games that you would blow your mind. I'm blanking. There was one of the cool versions of Simon. I know she had a big hand, and I think it was. Anyway, some really cool stuff. I don't remember off the top of my head.
You can imagine, though, for 3 hours, I would have rather have sat with her and talked about board game design with her instead of talking oil and gas law. For 3 hours, so jealous of this guy who had no idea the wealth of information he could have gotten. I mean, she has art background that Rob always talks about and graphic design. Oh, what a missed opportunity. But enough about that. What has been...
Well, it's what they always say, right? And I guess in the Hamilton show also, listen, right? Stop, don't talk so much and listen. So
don't talk so much and listen.
Smile more, talk less.
So as much as while he was talking, I had the other ear listening in on what she was saying, because every once in a while she would fit in and talk about the projects that Rob and you were working on with Restoration Games. So, and I think one of them was they were talking about expansions for Downforce, and now you guys are making that happen, right? We
are. It's actually, I think we literally just got the final production copy today for Downforce's Danger Circuit is the expansion. And so that's probably going to get approved in the next day or two and get on a boat shortly after that. And it should hit street date sometime in July.
Hey, more tracks, man. You got to send us more tracks, Justin.
It's a new double-sided board, 2 new tracks that play very differently, and also 6 more player powers. That's the one thing we heard, right, is we love it, but we want more tracks and more powers. So we heard. And the tracks are really cool. I'm excited. We got the cover artist, Tavis Coburn. Everybody loves his cover work. Love it. We actually got him to do the board art, too, and it came out really neat. And they're 2 totally different styles of track, also with 2 different sets of rules. Little sort of surprise thing we've got. One of the things we're doing for Fireball Island is this road trip that JR is taking. I mean, maybe we'll talk about that. But he's driving around with the prototype for Fireball Island, going to all these different places. And as a little surprise, he actually we had a pre-production copy. It's like basically a production copy, almost close to the actual thing, of the Danger Circuit expansion. So I know he was up at Beer Mongers in York this evening, and I saw people were playing Fireball Island, and right in the background, people were playing Downforce. So
home of the Secret Cabal. So he is showing it off to the Secret Cabal right now at Beer Mongers.
Yeah, I think they're probably still going. I would guess, sure.
That is neat. Hey, BJ from Board Game Gumbo, it's Gumbo Live. I've got Justin D. Jacobson, the CEO of Restoration Games. We're going to be getting to that big Fireball Island. But Justin, this is a live show, so we're going to have some comments and maybe some questions from the crowd. One of them is my old buddy Steve O'Rourke from the Dukes of Dice. He'll be chiming in all day. You got to hire this guy. You'll see some of the things he says. But Steve says, Hamilton quotes, that's the way to start off an evening.
I'm actually really excited. My whole family were big fans of the show, but we've never had a chance to see it. We're finally going to go see it in Chicago this summer. So we finally got tickets. So I'm excited to go actually see that.
So what is, besides Downforce, and Fireball Island, what's the best game you've played so far this year? You're a gamer. You love talking games.
Does it have to be new to me this year?
Nope. Any game. What's the best game you played?
So the game, it's kind of a running joke, actually, among
something new that you haven't played this year, maybe.
A good amount. It's interesting. Not as many as before I started doing it for a job, but I played a good amount. Actually, 2 years ago, I played 500. I made 500 plays was my goal, and I hit it.
Wow. Okay,
that's a lot of work. I'm not trying to do that anymore. But I've probably played a couple hundred plays of different things. So part of it is I live down here in South Florida, and I'm good friends with Tom Vassell. His monthly game day over at Cool Stuff I go to regularly, and so a lot of times I get to play games that he's trying out. He's playing for reviews and stuff, and a lot of those are not particularly good, but it's kind of fun. I mean, for me, as a designer and a publisher, I'm sort of sometimes interested in seeing bad games as much as good games.
Well, as he always says, he plays the trash so we don't have to, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of a running joke among Team Restoration, but I am thoroughly hooked on Gloomhaven. So it's funny. I had a D&D group that for years and years we played, and it just has gotten harder and harder and harder to actually get D&D to the table on a regular basis, like a campaign basis. We're all professionals. Most of us have kids. It's just very tough. And then the prep work is tough too on top of that. So we sort of gave Gloomhaven a try, and we all just really took to it. So it basically has replaced D&D for us, at least for now. We've probably got over 100 hours into it, believe it or not.
Yeah, I've only played 3 scenarios, but I dropped out so another person could join in who was more regular than I. And they're all on their second and third generation characters in it, and it's an actual amazing game. I just can't get over how good this game is.
Yeah, it's a really sort of hits a sweet spot for us in our D&D campaign. We were always mostly a combat-oriented game anyway.
Okay.
And this actually makes the combat a little more interesting. There's not the role-playing, obviously. But even that, I mean, just sort of shooting the breeze around that, we do all right, too. So
you got to bring in a little RPG, though. I mean, when we're playing, we're talking between scenarios. We're talking during the fights. I mean, you just can't help role-playing it a little bit, don't you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. And you sort of build up this shared history of, remember that time, what happened to so-and-so, and if only we had that character here, he'd be perfect for this, event or scenario.
What's been your favorite class or character that you've had so far?
I'm playing right now the, what's it called? The Plague Bearer, or the Cthulhu face guy.
Oh, I haven't seen that one.
Oh my goodness. He is is an absolute blast to play. But I mean, so much fun. I started with the Spellweaver, which I did enjoy quite a bit.
Okay.
I played the Quartermaster, which I didn't like so much.
I don't know that one either. It must be deeper in
the guy with all the equipment. And then now this I think it's Plague Bearer. Oh man. So much fun. Just like a really wild way to play. I don't want to spoil anything. But
yeah, I know. I've actually gone a couple of nights and watched the group playing, and watching Gloomhaven is almost as fun as playing because you're really watching this little story develop.
It's funny. Our group is actually 5 players, and it's only really supposed to play 4. And what happens is we rotate every scenario. As the 5th player will sit out, they'll run the monsters, so we don't have to, which takes the cognitive load of us, which is nice. And they're still sort of involved in the story and, cracking jokes and stuff like that. And it works great for us. So, I mean, that's our game right now. We're playing a lot. Usually I'll bring like a game, just to break the ice before we jump in, but we'll start at 10 in the morning and go till midnight, which is what we used to do in D&D. We just do it with Gloomhaven now.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Actually, the group that's playing used to be a D&D group, and I don't think they've picked up a pen and paper and dice since they got Gloomhaven. It's sort of replaced it.
Yeah, I still play every once in a while. Like especially like if I go to a convention, I'll try and always get a session in of some RPG. I enjoy role playing a lot. It just has some practical limitations for me that Gloomhaven doesn't. Other than carrying
are
that
you
box
still
around.
doing any RPG work with any of your companies or your design work at all?
Well, not really. Interestingly, so for people who don't know, I was actually very active in publishing during the D20 era.
Right.
Third edition. I did a lot of third-party, licensed publishing under the D20 license, under my imprint, Blue Devil Games, and
ACC all the way, right?
Yeah, exactly. One of the things we did is we did the first full-sized campaign setting for a sci-fi campaign setting for when D20 Modern came out, called Dawning Star, which was really well liked and well reviewed and whatnot. Did well, and so a few years ago, I had the idea with Lee Hammock. He did all the heavy lifting on it. To redo it with the Fate system from Evil Hat Productions, who I've done a lot of work with, and I know those guys real well. And so we actually did that, and we just finished it. We had some personal problems we were dealing with in the middle of trying to develop it, but we just got that PDF done, and I'm in the process right now of getting the physical books printed up to go out. But I really don't do RPG stuff anymore in terms of publishing or developing or anything like that. Just more for fun myself.
Yeah, Restoration Games has taken part of your time, but you were able to go to Dice Tower Con, and actually I got a shot up here of me and you and Eric Summer playing Magic Maze. Have you played Magic Maze since you played it over there at Dice Tower Con?
I have not. I thought about getting it, and I don't think. So I play a lot with my kids. I have two daughters, 11 and 12, and I think it's a little too tense for one of my kids. I don't think she would like it at all.
I can see
it's very tense. I enjoyed it, but I just didn't think I'd get a lot of plays out of it because of that. So I passed on it.
Hey, we got a comment from or a question from Steve. Any comments on the growth of storytelling in board games, even if they don't rise to the level of a full-on RPG? There's so many choose-your-own-adventure scenario-based games that have single plays or campaign options. We were talking about this in our game group a week or two ago, that over the last year there's been an influx of not just games, amazing games that have a storytelling element in it, and even companies that use that as their byline. Ignacy talks about it all the time. Portal Games byline is, games that tell stories. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think it's great, and like I said, there is sort of a convergence there almost, where it used to be the dungeon crawlers were all just very crunchy, with just lip service to the story. But I think we sort of realized, and I gave a lot of credit to Rob. I think the publishing of Risk Legacy, I think, went a long way towards sort of breaking that last barrier to let the board game and RPGs converge a lot more than they had before. The idea of it's okay, something like Time Stories, to buy a module that you'll play once. It's okay, because you're getting that entertainment value out of it in a way that you couldn't get in a game that you wouldn't be one and done, right? Like a repetitive game. That the idea of doing that actually gives you some tools to make the game more interesting, to make the narrative stronger, things like that. So it's a super exciting time to be publishing. In fact, I'm working on one. So this was sort of my pet project. I've been calling Project Adam, that I've been working on for a couple of years now. As a restoration I am working on. Yeah.
I'm trying to figure it out.
I'd be surprised. It's kind of an obscure game too. So,
okay.
But it's got some campaign elements to it. And I'm sort of excited to be working on it now because
it's Hero Quest.
No.
I'm joking.
Listen, not the first to request that. That's right up there at the top of the suggestion list. Sure. A lot of hurdles with that one.
Project Adam. Is there a possibility it'll come out in 18 or 19?
It's definitely not going to come out in 18. I hope to finish the design in 18 and get it out in 19. But I got some work to do.
Yeah, well, talking about storytelling games. So I'm a former scoutmaster of a scout troop, and a lot of the guys I introduce once or twice a year at board game nights and things like that. And a lot of these guys also play in D&D in high school, of course. And when they come to our board game nights, they're always looking for that storytelling game. And what suggestions do you have? The first one I have is, and I'm anxious to hear what you think, The first one I have is a Rob Davio game. It's not my favorite game, but Betrayal in the House on the Hill is one that these teenagers that like RPG, they almost gravitate to. In fact, most of the time they already know the game. I don't even have to introduce it to them. They've already played it with their friends, and they break it out and they start playing it right away. Do you have any other games that you think are a good crossover for those teenager college guys that are really into RPG and then all of a sudden find out about Board Game Geek?
Well, I think Time Stories is definitely a good one. It's like a real good mix of story and puzzle and game. So definitely like that one. And then also, obviously, of course, you can pick what module you want to play with it. So you can pick one that suits your fancy.
I like that.
Something like Tales of Arabian Nights is always kind of a cool one because it's fairly easy and you end up with some wild stuff going on, so.
They just love that. So Steve says Project Atom or Project Adam.
Yeah.
If there's a hint in there, the spelling really matters.
It does matter. So it's ADAM. So I'm also notorious among the team for obsessing over my project code names because I want them to be evocative so that when you actually hear what it is, you're like, oh. But until then, I don't want anyone to crack them because I'd be really nervous if somebody found out what I was working on before I was ready to tell them. Mm-hmm. So, for example, Fireball Island was Project Alabaster for a long time.
Ooh, yeah, Alabaster. Wow,
that would have been a tough one. It's like Marble,
right?
Similar to Marble. So, and then obviously the marbles in Fireball Island is kind of a key feature of the game. So
I'm trying to think, and it's got RPG aspects, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be a tough one, but
it would be the end of the world if you guessed it. I would tell you, but I can't imagine you'd guess it. It's like I said, it's also a pretty obscure game. So.
Oh, and Jeremy Jeremy, thanks for checking in. He wants to know if Project Eve is the sequel to Project Adam.
Not that Adam. I'll tell you that. Different Adam.
Jeremy, I've been Googling ribs and board games to see if that's what it was, but I can't find one other than Operation.
I will give you a hint. It's a non-biblical Adam.
Non-biblical Adam. Oh, okay, that's an interesting one. Oh, you never know. These guys are good. They may be able to guess it. BJ from Board Game Gumbo here on Gumbo Live, episode 38. I have Justin D. Jacobson as my special guest here from Restoration Games, and we're going to be talking about a tiny little project that is not getting a lot of notice on Kickstarter. We're talking about Fireball Island, which, Jeremy, this was so surreal. One of my favorite podcasts is, of course, Dukes of Dice, but other podcasts are Rolling Dice and Taking Names. And I'm listening to their podcast the same day as the Kickstarter. But the weird thing is, the surreal part is that you guys recorded it a week ago, so you have no idea that the Kickstarter is blowing up. But Tony keeps egging you guys on. It's going to be huge. You're going to be doing all these numbers. And Rob, he sounds nervous. Like, I don't even know if it's going to make 200,000. What was that like, recording the show the week before, and then a week later, you're watching the numbers just light up on the scoreboard?
Yeah, it was pretty interesting because Tony was during the recording, he was going, "Oh, we're at 1 million now." We're like, "Yeah, all right." And we didn't quite get to 1 million on the first day, but it was pretty wild. We really didn't know what to expect. I mean, we had done a Kickstarter the year before for Stop Thief, did really well. We were super excited by it. 2,500 backers, $100,000. And we'd had some success with Downforce, so we knew people were a little more familiar with us, and we knew Fireball Island was obviously highly requested, much bigger property that we were working with. But you never know, and we didn't know, and we thought we could do extremely well, like very well. Maybe, I'll be honest, not quite as wildly as we've done. I don't know that I expected quite that high. But we certainly knew we could do much better than Stop Thief. And then we also thought, maybe it'll just go over with dud. We were, especially in some ways, when it's that beloved a game, you get nervous that people are going to have a backlash as far as like any changes you make to it. And we always say we don't do reprints, we do restorations.
Sure.
So, we're just not interested in doing reprints. And what we're trying to do is take the spirit of the game that everyone loved about it, throw everything else away, and then just build the best game we can around that and make that the star, whatever it is about that game. And so, even things like, some people, of course, are all about the pure nostalgia. They're, want us to use all the same art and all the same rules, and, it's just not what we're about. But everyone who's played it, JR's, we were up at PAX East, and now he's taking it on the road. All the fans, everyone who's played it has said, has come away really excited by it and really positive. We really haven't had any, very negative comments, just maybe like some suggestions and things that aren't quite working. We're tweaking using it even as we speak, but it really has come out great. And the thing that's amazing about it is we didn't really realize until we got that real playable prototype. And, I could talk about the development process too. It's
sure.
ridiculous. But when we got that first real playable prototype and let people play with it, and you actually see, you don't realize how unique a game it is until you see people actually playing it. As I used to joke, I always wondered about, why hadn't someone brought it back before? And now I know, it's
now
such an incredible
right?
Design challenge. It's so different from anything else that, we've ever designed or even, played. It's just unlike anything else. And I think that's really what's driving the success of the Kickstarter. It's just such a unique game.
I think that's part of it. You know what's weird, Justin? There was a post on one of the Facebook groups a couple of weeks, about a month ago, and the guy said, "I'm sick and tired of Kickstarter. All it is a bunch of fantasy minis games like Hate and all this other stuff, and that's all they get, and no other games, are breaking through." And right as he's saying that, Gentes is doing $1 million for a Taste of Minstrel. Dinosaur Island blows up and does over $1 million. I forgot what they are now. I mean, it's $1 million, $2 million, something like that. And then, of course, you guys come out with not even over, produced European games with tons and tons of things. This is a kids game from the 80s that you all have that changed and restored, as you said, to appeal both to young people and also to gamers. And it's blowing up over $1 million. So was he wrong, or is it that those 3 games in the last couple of months touched a nerve?
Well, that's an interesting question. I certainly think that it's an interesting dynamic, because I think that the sort of Ameritrash, which I use as a term of endearment, believe me.
Yeah, me too.
Lots of minis. Those games really work on Kickstarter, and I think part of it is you're seeing something like Batman where it's Kickstarter only.
Yeah.
And I think you'll start seeing some more of these go that way. It's really the only economically feasible way these games can be made. And so I think it's sort of a market finding an audience, I do think that does make it, I mean, there's only so many dollars to go around, right? And there's only so much oxygen in the room.
We assume, yeah.
It can make it hard for, I'm seeing a lot of sort of I'm not seeing as many sort of mid-level games, like sort of the average games, not ordinary, that's not a good games, but just sort of typical games, not sort of finding that space or that room that they used to find on Kickstarter that you did a year or two ago. Sort of these just sort of solid, really interesting, typical games, they're having a harder time breaking through. Now, something like Dinosaur Island, really cool game. I think you have to stand out is really what it comes down to. And in the case of Gendes, that's an interesting one. I think it's just it had so many good reviews because it had been out before that it sort of had a lot of people looking to get in on it.
And I think people like the deluxeification. And speaking of deluxeification, you guys had a design challenge that you kind of hinted about earlier, that board. You knew now, you said, you kind of joked at Prescient that you now know why it was so hard to bring this game back. Tell us a little bit about those new board problems and how you think you guys have overcome that challenge. How's it going to work?
Sure. So the first challenge, of course, is the original board is ginormous, and it's one piece, and so it fits in the ginormous box, and you literally couldn't bring it to market today if you wanted to. There's no store would touch it. You might be able, and even shipping it would be a problem. Like it was huge. You could surf on that thing. And so our first design challenge was, we knew we wanted to make the board bigger, because that board and the marbles and taller, so we could get more gravity, so we could get more speed with the marbles. How would we do that and yet fit it in a box that a retailer could manage?
Mm-hmm.
And it was Mike Gray, actually. He's sort of a consultant for us. For those who don't know, he's an absolute legend in board games, and has designed many of the old games. If you know anything about any of the older games, designed lots of them, like Omega Virus, from Omega Virus to Fortress America to
Wow,
what is it, Mall Madness, I mean, all kinds of
that's all him.
diverse stuff. Yeah, he had a hand. I mean, he was essentially the head of game acquisition. I might not be getting the title quite right, for Hasbro for 20 years, and had a hand in tons of games. Side story. I have to tell you this story. It's amazing. I have to tell you the story.
Yeah, go ahead.
So when Rob and I first sort of decided, we were going to do this thing, he said, we should talk to Mike. And he lives like 15 minutes from me. You should come up here. I was flying up anyway, and he said, well, go talk to Mike. So we drive over to Mike Gray's house. He lets us in. He takes us down to his basement. I would need you to picture the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark when they're putting the Ark of the Covenant in the warehouse.
Right.
That is Mike Gray's basement, except that all those boxes are filled with the board game treasures your mind cannot even comprehend.
He's just got them in his basement.
Rows and rows and rows of games, and stuff that hasn't published, original art. So one of the games we did last year was Indulgence, which was a restoration of Dragon Master, and we were looking at it. He said, "Oh, I have some of the original art from the card." So he pulls out the actual paintings of the original art for some of these cards for Dragon Master. I'm like, you can't. I'm going through the racks of games. I'm looking through. I said, "What?" I see a box. It's a cardboard box, and handwritten on the side is unpublished Hero Quest expansions. And I'm like, you're lucky nobody knows you have this stuff.
Right.
I mean, I guess they do now, but
wow, that's a great story.
Amazing. And he's an amazing guy. So he has all that physical treasure, but he's also just a wealth of mental treasure. It's just unbelievable. And so they were over, Rob and Lindsay and maybe Jason were over at Mike's house playing the old Fireball Island when we first started working on it. And he sketched out a little thing on a napkin. But why don't you take 3 separate trays that you can nest in the box, but then you stack them like, Dixie cups on the table.
Brilliant.
And you can see the design today is pretty much what it turned out to be. So that was the first thing. And then, of course, the second thing is designing a 3-dimensional board. That's not just 3-dimensional for aesthetics, but it has to be 3-dimensional in a way that works for physics, right? I mean, the paths have to work. The speed has to work. The branching paths, it all has to work on a physical level and not just an aesthetic level. And so we started out, I think JR was the first one to sketch sort of a new layout, because the other thing we wanted to do, the original game's just a pure race game, which is fine, but it's not super dynamic.
Yeah.
We wanted to sort of give more choices to the players and things, so that meant opening up the paths and creating more paths and branches and things like that, and reasons for players to go to different parts of the islands and things like that. And so JR sort of sketched it out. And then we worked with Noah Edelman of Game Trays, who you might have heard of. He did a lot of these amazing inserts for like Mechs versus Minions, and he's done some really cool like player aids for Terraforming Mars and all kinds of stuff. And he did a lot of the hard work at the beginning of just taking an idea, a 2-dimensional piece of paper, and turning it into a 3D file. And we literally went back and forth for probably a couple months with him. And we got close, but even that, it's so theoretical at that point that it's hard to make it into something that works on the table. And so the next step was we actually retained a toy design firm that happens to be within driving distance of Rob, like 20 minutes away or so. And so we flipped those 3D files over to them, and they actually 3D printed them. And then Rob would drive down there a few times a week and literally just drop marbles down the mountain and
Just
add clay.
it and changing it.
And that's so that we're using actual clay. So you take this clay and you're like, oh, this is going too fast. We need to make it a little less steep. And so you put a little clay down. Oh, we need this turn to be not quite as tight. You put a little clay down, and doing all this stuff. And then after a month or so of that, you finally got something that's working. And now what we need to, we have this huge, it's like 3D printed clay screwed down to a piece of plywood. We send it out to like this space age laser measuring thing where it can scan this 3-dimensional island and turn it back into a 3D file that we can then send to our manufacturer to print. So, I mean, it's really, really fascinating.
What a process. PJ from Board Game Gumbo here, Gumbo Live with Justin Jacobson from Restoration Games. We're talking about Fireball Island. And Justin, I actually got some photos of some of the cool things that I picked up out of your Kickstarter campaign. You guys are doing something a little bit different. You got the base game that is a pretty reasonable price for all the stuff that you got, but you're also talking expansions right off the bat. And can I say it? It's like marbles galore. I mean, there's all kind of different expansions, but all these different kinds of marbles. Let's see if I can pull up one of them here. See if you can see that. So that's the last adventure for $25. What's the story on that one? Where did that come from?
So one of the things we wanted to do is create sort of a visual and narrative break from the original one. So the original one is, Adventurers on an Island. It came out a few years after Raiders, and sort of a hot theme. And but we wanted, it's 30 years later. We wanted to do something a little fresher, and so we sort of came up with this idea of actually advancing the timeline 30 years. What if there had been this island that adventurers were exploring 30 years ago, but now it's 30 years later? Sure. And the idea we came up with was this sort of somewhat shady corporation buys the island and decides to put an adventure tourism resort on it. Mm-hmm. And now who gets to go to this island? It's not adventurers. It's like the people who win the golden ticket, right? They get to be the first guests on the island. But this company is just like, super shady. And so they'll drop you off in the helicopter, and, they won't pick you up until you have photos from all different parts of the island per the user agreement. And the last adventurer is the guy who actually has been trapped on the island for 30 years and knows what the heck he's doing. So that's the thematic twist on it. What it does mechanically is it adds another miniature, who's you can see on the cover there. And so that adds for a 5th player option.
And more marbles.
More marbles. Those are the snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
Why did it have to be snakes?
And then, of course, a boulder, reminiscent of the opening scene there.
Sure.
And some more cards, too, some player powers. So the idea is there's this, 80s gearing up scene, where Saul from Boca, he's one of our regular characters. Now he's, putting his necktie around his forehead and, rolling up his sleeves. And now he's like a weekend warrior type guy. So these player powers make the original players slightly more competent. And, from a mechanical standpoint, we wanted to add some sort of different vectors of play, if you will, things that you could tweak the dials on.
And I saw another one was the pirate ship. Let me see if I can find that one, if I have that one right.
There you go. That's the Crimson Cutlass. So a couple things there. One, there's actually was a proof of concept video. I think a lot of people have seen it going around a few years back for an idea of, I think it's called Island Hopper, of expansions for Fireball Island that you could sort of attach to the main island and have similar types of experiences with. So we like the idea conceptually of having new locations to go to. We thought it was a little cumbersome to try and in fact, that Island Hopper, I think, was sort of designed to go on a smaller version of the main island. But if you start attaching a whole set of islands around the original size island, you would need a table, like a ping pong table.
Yeah, exactly.
So we like the idea of this separate location. What we did is we said you can get there through the cave. So we've got this natural cave system on the island. And instead of just rolling to see where you go on the island, you can also use it to come out on some of these other locations. And so this is sort of our vector where we have a new location. It's this pirate ship. And again, we added some other things. There are a couple more. There's a really cool shot, and there's actually a great GIF of it on the campaign page where Lindsay, you fire a cannonball. There's a Jolly Roger on the bow of the ship, and you sort of flick the bowsprit, and it shoots the marble out towards the captain's wheel. And if you hit it just right, the captain's wheel is sort of a piece of plastic that sits on the poop deck. And if somebody's on there and you hit it just right, you can send them like flying off. And then also it's got this mast on the side. We're still tweaking that one, but the gist of it is that it's sort of like Spill the Beans, where you're putting marbles in the crow's nest, and eventually if you put enough in, it'll tip over and they start spilling out all over the deck. And then on the deck, we have these cannons that rotate that sort of can guide the marbles in a particular direction to people who might be on the ship. But it's also a good sort of, all this stuff we wanted to see, like what were people interested in? What's getting people excited? As it turns out, everything.
Yeah.
But it opens up new ideas for us for expansions down the road. I mean, given the success of the Kickstarter, we are pretty confident at this point this is a sandbox we can play in for a little bit. And so we've actually got a whole list of ideas for other kinds of expansions, and some of those will be new locations that other players can go to. And the cool thing is you can add as many or mix and match all these expansions. The ones you like, you play and leave in. The ones you don't have to. If you want to throw them all in at the same time, you can. It'll work. It'll be delicious madness, but it'll work.
Now, you guys have said that the plan's already in place. You can produce and deliver this Kickstarter by the end of the year, maybe even a little earlier. Are these expansions also going to be shipped with them, or are these going to be things that y'all are still tweaking and won't come out till next year?
No. So everything in the campaign is going to be shipped at once.
Okay.
Now in retail, that's another perk of backing. So I know some people will wait for retail. That's fine. That's great. We appreciate that too.
Yeah.
But just FYI, the main game is scheduled to will be released shortly after the Kickstarter fulfillment goes out. We're looking at doing a street date of essentially Black Friday. We want to get in stores for Black Friday. We are planning on releasing one of the expansions at launch, and then the other two will come out 30 days and then 60 days after that. Okay. Give the retailers time to spread it out. It's better for them that way. But the backers will get everything at once. And we have worked extremely hard to make sure our production timeline works so that we get this stuff done. We've actually built in some cushion. I mean, if everything goes great, there's a chance we could be releasing this at Essen.
Oh, wow.
Now, I'm not super optimistic of that because something always goes wrong. But we built that in so that even if something happens, as long as it's not catastrophic, we will get the game out in November. And I know a lot of people, and we've already heard this, is they're buying it as a holiday present for somebody, which is great. That's what we love to hear. And we're pretty confident we'll be able to get it out.
I'm checking my phone because I had two questions offline before the show started that I wanted to make sure I didn't forget. Dan Cheston from the Gateway and Filler Games Facebook group that I hang out a lot, he wanted to know if the Painted Minis add-on from the Kickstarter will be available at retail later on. I'm assuming that this is a Kickstarter exclusive?
So we don't actually believe in Kickstarter exclusives in the literal sense of the term. We know not everyone, it's not a cheap game. We know that. We know that not everyone can get it, and there are people who might not even, believe it or not, have heard of it, for one reason or another. Particularly a game like this, if they're not in, board game Kickstarter circle, they might not even hear about it. So we don't want to punish those people. And so the way we're doing it is we have things that are not Kickstarter exclusive, but that will not be available in retail. What I mean by that is, so for example, everybody who backs, even at the base game level, gets this fourth expansion, which is called the Treasure Trove, where we're basically it's a bunch of sort of mini expansions and extra cards and things like that we just keep adding cards as we hit stretch goals. I think we're up to like 25 or 26 cards now.
Nice.
More souvenirs. We've got legendary artifacts that are on the island and things like that. We just announced a new stretch goal for the Hangry expansion, which has more Take That cards in it. And so what we'll do is the painted miniatures, same thing. We have a deluxe marble set that everyone's getting who backs.
But if you don't back it, you've got a shot at getting the painted minis afterwards?
Yeah, so what we'll do is we'll sell them on our web store.
Oh,
and
okay.
at conventions while supplies last, was not something we'll obviously be reordering.
Sure.
But we're going to order a few extras, not few, but, some extras depending on how many we get through the Kickstarter we have to order. And then those will be available, like I said, through our web store, conventions, maybe on the Board Game Geek Market, something like that, but not in retail.
And if you're a friendly local game store,
I should clarify. So just real quickly, we have a retailer pledge level.
That's what I was going to talk about.
Retailers who back at that pledge level can order those add-ons through the Kickstarter also, and they will get those. So if your local game store happens to have backed and ordered that, then yes, you'll be able to get it through them, through retail. So if you have a local game store that you like to support, by all means, go to them and ask them to get it through the Kickstarter. That's fine too.
Yeah, you won't see me as a backer, and it's not that I don't want the game. I actually went to the at our Gumbo game night. We actually talked to the FLGS owner that night, and he said, "Heck yeah!" He put in the $20 pledge. We're all going to get it through there, and we're going to do a free demo for him at the holiday season. He'll order extra ones. We'll do the demo, and when the parents come through his hobby shop and they see people playing this game, you know what they're going to do. They're going to buy those extra copies.
Yeah,
but I wanted to make sure we can still get the painted mini. So
yeah. So we really like and believe in the local game store, that concept of the third space, a place where people can meet and socialize, and that's something we believe in strongly. So we've always tried to support that. We worked really hard to figure out a way to do this, to structure this retailer pledge level. And we started talking to people, retailers at Gamma, about it, and got some good feedback and tweaked it a little more. And we've gotten good response. So I'm pleased with that part of it for sure.
Hey, John Schmonsis is checking in, the third. He says, what do you think were the keys to getting the theme right during the design for Fireball Island? He's right. You guys have tweaked the things a little bit. You talked about earlier the race and stealing the gym and beating up on each other. It's kind of changed for this project, right?
Yeah. So we sort of, when we first looked at it, we wanted to change that sort of approach a little bit. And conceptually, the idea of getting blasted by a fireball and then putting yourself back upright and keep on going, it had more, frankly, of sort of a Looney Tunes type, physical comedy, Wile E. Coyote type thing, even than the adventuring thing. Like, thematically, the adventuring thing is cool, but frankly, this sort of makes some more sense in a way. So we sort of looked at it in that way. We liked the idea of the Hitchcockian theme of an ordinary person in an extraordinary situation. And so that you could just be this ordinary, tourist caught on this fireball island is sort of inherently an interesting juxtaposition. And then, just like I said, sort of that physical comedy, and almost a Pixar level too, where the kids will appreciate it on one level, and then there'll be some sort of like, not jokes per se, but sort of, lines and themes and graphical nods that parents might get or adults might get that might go over a kid's head, for example.
That makes sense. And thank you, John, for checking in. BJ from Board Game Gumbo here at Gumbo Live with Justin D. Jacobson of Restoration Games. We're talking about Fireball Island. I do have one more question about Fireball Island, and it's, what is the size and cost of J.R. Honeycutt's new car? Since I did hear you promise him one on the Rolling Dice and Taking Names podcast.
Well, let's be clear now. So the way this story went down is we were talking when we got the rights to do the game, and I that's actually one of my favorite parts of the job is I'm constantly finagling with all kinds of people trying to get rights to games and work stuff out, and this one was, so the story goes back literally more than a year. We first approached Bruce Lund of London Company, who did the original toy design part of it. And when we talked to him about it, he said, "Oh, your timing's propitious." That was the word he used. Ooh. And we kept going back. I was like, it was months and months. We were going around, and finally we got the rights to do it. And one of the most exciting parts of my job is when I get to go to the team and say, "Guess what? We got the rights to do Fireball Island."
Oh wow!
Like, whatever. And so JR's first comment was, "Oh, we're going to do $5 million on that Kickstarter." And I was like, "JR, if we do $5 million on that Kickstarter, I will get you a car." And it was kind of a running joke for a long time. And then it occurred to me, if we did $5 million on the Kickstarter, I would be thrilled to buy him a car.
Absolutely.
So that was the deal. I said, that's the stretch goal for $5 million. If we get to $5 million, you get a car.
And that brings up a little topic. One of the things that John had talked about, he thought that national tour is a great idea. And I've got a graphic showing you've got JR all over the country. Well, at least let's say Texas East. You've got him all over that part of the country. Whose idea was that? And I mean, it's brilliant, I think.
Yeah, it was JR's idea. So we were really concerned because normally when you do a Kickstarter, you send a bunch of review copies out and get videos from all the famous, content creators. Sure. And you put the videos up on your page and they're all saying, oh, this is a good game. Here's how it works, blah, blah, blah. We couldn't do that. We had one prototype that cost like $5,000. And what are we going to do? And so Jared said, let's just drive it around to everybody. And it was, all right, fine. He was so jazzed by the idea. That night, he put out a call across the land. We want to come to your games. And we got such a good response from it. It was really amazing. And so it came together very quickly. Fortunately, JR is he loves driving. So that part's fine. And we're
tell JR that John's going to see him in Houston.
There you go. But we knew so we had to rent a car because I wasn't going to let him put that kind of mileage on his car. And so we got this nice, huge black SUV. We got some car magnets on the side that say official tour vehicle with a big picture of Volcar. And we just, all this stuff came into place. It's really going well because it's better, frankly. It's better because we're going to these places and we're still meeting with content creators. So tonight was Secret Cabal, but there's also all these sort of regular folks who are interested in the game. And some of them drove for hours to come and give it a shot, and they're getting a chance to play it. It's super exciting. And like I said, the feedback's been great. It's like a hyper intensive play test where we get to make these tweaks oh, this card's not working right, or people are having trouble seeing the snapshots. We need to make those spaces. It's all this super intensive testing we get to do, and everybody's having fun with it. So it's the best of all worlds. It was kind of a happy accident caused by a limitation, and so that's sometimes when the best innovations happen. But I would do it again in a heartbeat. I assume JR's up for driving. Now, the only side to the problem, of course, is the West Coast feels neglected. It's so spread out. It's hard to do a road trip tour on the West Coast. But I mentioned this. We just announced this today in an update.
Oh, I didn't hear this.
Friday. What's that?
I said I didn't hear this. What do you?
Yeah, this Friday in Seattle or in Bellevue, the Bellevue location of Mox Boarding House.
Sure.
Rob Davio and Lindsay are going out. Suzanne is out there, and we rented out a room, and they will have the top secret second prototype that we just got and just got hand painted. So they'll have that to play out there. One night only, one location only. They're flying back afterwards. We got a cake from Sugar High Score I'm excited about.
Sure.
I saw a little preview. It looks really amazing.
Why those ladies?
So that's going to be super fun. So if you're on the West Coast within any kind of range of Bellevue this Friday, I think it starts at 5. I think it's 5 to 11. Go out to Mox Boarding House and check it out.
We got to get the word out. Kirk Beezer says, great promotional campaign. You guys have really knocked it out the park.
Well, I have to give
a good program.
All the credit to our master of fireworks, Suzanne Sheldon. She is absolutely amazing. So yeah, no, we were a lot less organized about that kind of stuff before she came on board. So she really she runs a tight ship.
When I see her, I'm going to tell her she ran a great campaign. This has been a long time. You guys have teased it out, and it's just been fantastic. So good job on that. BJ from Board Game Gumbo. I've got Justin D. Jacobson from Restoration Games here on Gumbo Live. And Justin, the last thing we love to do here on the Gumbo is the Envie Game. The Envie Game is a little quick game that we play. It's a Cajun word that means a hankering. Maybe people from up north would say a jonesing, right? A jonesing for something. Well, we use it here in this context. It's a jonesing to play a game. It could be something that you've never played before, something that you love, maybe your favorite game of all time. Basically what it is right now, if the show stopped and you could pick your playing partners and you could pick the game, don't tell us. We're going to try to guess with 20 questions, trying to figure out what that game is. You got a game in mind?
I do.
All right, Crew to Gumbo, let's get those questions ready. I'll be asking questions. I'm going to be limited to about 20 questions. These guys are going to be fired at you, so theirs don't count, but we'll see if we can figure it out. If we figure it out, we win. If not, Justin will be the big winner. One of the questions I always ask first, of course, is it competitive or cooperative? And I'm going to guess it's cooperative.
Cooperative.
Yeah, I did a little show prep for you to see what kind of games I think you like. And we'll see if my show prep was right or wrong. You never know.
I have a feeling you guys will get it. I don't think
we'll see. Is it an American designer or a European? And I'm going to guess it's a European designer.
American.
Oh, no, I am wrong. Well, then I'm in trouble because the game I was thinking of is not that one. Oh,
what was the game you were thinking of?
I was thinking you talk a lot about Robinson Crusoe, so I thought maybe.
I play that one all the time, though.
Dang it. All right, Steve.
Because I love it solo. I play a lot of solo gaming, and I love it solo. So
you talk about it a lot. All right, board-based or card-based?
Board.
Board-based. Would you consider it an Ameritrash or a Euro or hybrid style? Is that a tough one?
Yeah, I'd say hybrid.
You hesitated, though, huh? Steve, that might be a little. Yeah, I asked that one, Steve. Card or board based? It's board based, and he says it's a hybrid. Okay. Would you consider it highly thematic, or is it more of an abstract type game?
Highly thematic.
Highly thematic. Is it designed by Rob Davio?
Yes.
That makes it a little bit easier because we know which one
narrows it down a little.
Yeah, but of course he's working on one right now that it could also be it because that one is not the one he's working on now is not really cooperative. I always call it cooperative until you're not.
Talking about Betrayal Legacy.
Yeah, Betrayal Legacy. I'm assuming that's not it, right?
No, that's not it. Although I would be thrilled to play that one as well.
Yeah, sure. Well, Rob should let you in. I mean, you guys are partners, right? He should be letting you play.
I helped with the contract.
Oh, okay. John wants to know, does it have meeples? If it's the game I'm thinking of, probably not, right?
Not that I know of.
Yeah, not. Does it have, almost said a spoiler. Oh, maybe I shouldn't say it. Does it have something with a Z on it instead of meeples near the middle of the game?
What?
Yeah, that's probably 202s. Oh. All right, so highly thematic. Since it's a Rob design, I'm assuming it came out in the last 3 years?
Yes.
Is it really highly rated on BGG?
Is it? I don't know.
Oh, maybe it's not the one I'm thinking of then.
Let's
see. See, and I can't cheat. I can't go on to BGG to try to see what games he's designed. Is it a legacy game?
Yes.
All right. So I'm seeing if anybody else is going to make a guess because I'm about to guess. I'm thinking it's PL2, Pandemic Legacy 2.
That is correct.
Season 2? Yeah. You threw me off. I really thought you were going to say Robinson Crusoe because you talk about it a lot. And I wanted to ask you, because one of the things you always do is you talk about that you love the game, but you never say really why. What draws you to Robinson Crusoe? Is it your RPG background?
I think that's part of it. So it does something in a really unique way. And it again, I play it almost exclusively solo. And it's somehow a solo game that also creates really unique stories. I love this mechanic of the cards where you make a decision in one part of the game and then it goes into the deck and then somewhere down the road that card's coming back to have the effect of whatever that decision you made before is. I love that mechanic. I like the worker placement stuff too, and a lot of the resource management. I like all that stuff too. I'm pretty much an omni gamer. There's almost no games that I'll turn down. And so that's got lots of little bits of all these different other types of games with that one little thing that I love. Robinson Crusoe is my number one rated game of all time, although Gloomhaven might be pushing it. But my all-time hands down best gaming experience was in Pandemic Legacy Season 1. I was actually, this was back when I had my law firm, and I was like, I got to play it. Like, I don't want to mess it up. So I found some of my employees who were into games, and I said, look, we'll play during lunch once a week, and you don't have to clock out.
Oh, nice.
So they're like, we're in. So we played once a week, and it was almost perfect because you're just jonesing for it again. I don't want a shotgun and I want to savor it, but I don't want to miss too much time in between. So it was perfect. And for those of you who played, blanking on what month it happened, September, but there's a big twist in the game, like a big dramatic shift. And it happened with my character. And I screamed so loud that one of my paralegals came down and said, "What's wrong, Mr. Jacobson?" Because I was just, I didn't think a game could do that. Like, it was just such a pleasant surprise to have that kind of experience in the game.
Can I tell you?
So I got Pandemic Legacy Season 2, but now I don't have my law firm. So I got to find a group. I want to make sure I do it in the same way where I can do it with the same group of people over, sort of a metered out period of time. And normally it'd be my regular group, except we're too busy playing Gloomhaven. So
Can I tell you that story?
Sure.
Bought Pandemic Legacy for my wife and my 2 sons, and we played religiously right after Christmas. And this is Season 1. Right after Christmas, we're playing it every 3 or 4 days. We're moving through. We got into April, a couple of twists, as you remember, in April, and we haven't played it since. They got busy with school, and they just haven't got back to it. And it's one of those games where once you get out of it, I can't seem to get them. I mean, I'm jonesing for now 4 months, and I'm ready to go back to it and finish it because everybody keeps telling me about the fall. But, man, I can't wait to it, and that's my sad story. I really want to play it. Hey, Steve O'Rourke says a good solo game is like curling up with a great book. And he's right.
I love solo games.
But he said if you need a game group, come on up to New York and he'll volunteer as tribute. So
fair enough.
We got to get you to finish that Pandemic Season 2. And I'm assuming Tom and all those guys have all finished it. So you'll have to find a different group.
Oh, yeah.
BJ from Board Game Gumbo here. That was your pick, Pandemic Legacy Season 2. That was the Envie game. And this has been Justin D. Jacobson here talking about Fireball Island. Anything last minute things you want to tell about Fireball Island? Any little sneak peeks about something coming up with the campaign?
We've got some more stretch goals we've got planned. We've got a few that we're excited about, but we can't announce yet because we're still trying to make sure. So I talked a little bit about it in the update today. Is the one thing we want to make sure with the stretch goals is, among other things, that we don't blow that production timeline. So there's really cool ideas. We love hearing all the ideas, and some of the stuff.
So many in those comments. There's like hundreds of enhancements they want.
Yeah, but so some of this stuff might end up in future expansions, even, or something like that. But we do have a couple really cool ones. I think people will like, but we have to make sure we can do them. So we'll see. So I think that's about it. We got one more fun one. We got the cook-off between Rob and I will be a future stretch goal, and then of course JR's car. So,
well, Steve says great show as usual. Wonderful to hear from you, and let us know when we can expect Dark Tower from Restoration Games.
Now that Fireball Island has been done, Dark Tower and Hero Quest are neck and literally within like votes of each other. I have to check because one of the other things that we have on our website, for those of you listening, if you go to the website right at the top, it's what game would you like to see us bring back and why, and you click the button and that's it. So I get votes, dozens of votes every day. And since we did the Kickstarter campaign, even more, and I have to every Hero Quest and Dark Tower are neck and neck all the time. So
I can imagine. All right, board gamers, that's it for another episode of Gumbo Live. I want to thank my guest, Justin Jacobson of Restoration Games. Hey, Justin, how can they best reach you?
So we're at restorationgames.com, and you can email me if you've got questions, like an actual problem or a question or something, at justin@restorationgames.com. But I am most active on Twitter. I do all the Twittering for the company, which is at Restoration Game. Leave off the extra S for savings.
Sure.
Because I guess because the Twitter handles can be that one.
Yeah, sure.
So we're at Restoration Game on Twitter. I dip my toe in Facebook every once in a while, but I'm really not super active over there. So Twitter's definitely the best way to sort of interact with me or ask me an easy question.
All right, well, make sure to like our Facebook page, facebook.com/boardgamegumbo. It helps us get the word out about all of our upcoming guests and shows. Speaking of which, next week we've got Phoebe Wild, the social manager, I guess sort of like Suzanne for you guys, from Bezier Games, and she'll be coming in to talk about their new legacy game, Ultimate Werewolf Legacy. Hey, I'm BJ from Board Game Gumbo, and until next time, Justin, laissez le bon temps rouler.
Bye, everybody.